I've been wrenching on trucks for 22 years. I've fixed everything from blown head gaskets to cracked frames. I've worked on diesels that sat in a field for a decade and still got them running. I've rebuilt transmissions, replaced rear ends, diagnosed electrical gremlins that stumped everyone else. My shop is in rural Tennessee, and I've kept working trucks alive for farmers, contractors, and families who couldn't afford to throw a vehicle away. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. But last month, a guy rolled a brand new electric truck into my lot and asked me to look at it. He said his battery warning lights were on and the truck was giving him reduced power. He'd called 3 shops before mine. All 3 turned him away. He was hoping I'd be different. I had to give him the same answer. Not because I didn't want the work, not because I'm afraid of new technology, because I legally, practically, and safely could not touch that vehicle's high-voltage system. That's not a skill issue. That's not stubbornness. That is the documented reality of electric trucks in America right now, and most buyers have absolutely no idea what they're walking into when they sign that purchase agreement. If you own a truck or you're thinking about buying one, you need to hear everything I'm about to tell you. Subscribe right now and stay with me, because what I'm going to cover is not opinion. It's documented, it's verifiable, and it will permanently change how you evaluate any electric truck in any showroom. Let me start with the most basic question a truck owner can ask. Why can't your local shop work on an electric truck? The answer starts with voltage. A conventional gasoline or diesel pickup truck operates on a 12-volt electrical system. Your mechanic knows that system cold. They learned it in trade school. They've worked on it for years, and every diagnostic tool in their shop is built around it. An electric truck like the Ford F-150 Lightning or the Rivian R1T runs on a high-voltage battery pack that operates between 400 and 800 volts. That is not a minor step up. That is the difference between a static shock and a fatal electrocution. OSHA classifies anything above 50 volts as a genuine shock hazard. These trucks carry 8 to 16 times that threshold, running through orange high-voltage cables that are impossible to ignore once you know what they are. To work safely around that system, a technician needs specialized personal protective equipment that most shops don't own and haven't had to own. High-voltage insulated gloves rated to at least 1,000 volts, arc flash face shields, insulating mats, proper lockout-tagout procedures designed for high-voltage systems rather than standard vehicle battery disconnects. Beyond the equipment, you need formal training and certification. Ford's high-voltage safety certification requires specific coursework and hands-on training that takes time and money to complete. General Motors has their own certification path. So does Rivian. Without the appropriate certification and equipment, touching the high-voltage system is not just physically dangerous. It is a liability exposure that would put a small shop out of business with a single incident. Any attorney worth their license would have a field day with a shop that attempted high-voltage EV battery work without the proper credentials. The danger is not limited to shock. There is something called thermal runaway, and every EV technician learns about it early because it is one of the most serious risks in the field. Thermal runaway is what happens when a lithium-ion cell inside the battery pack starts overheating, and the chemical reaction becomes self-sustaining. The heat from that cell raises the temperature of adjacent cells. Those cells heat up further. The reaction cascades through the pack. Before it's over, you are dealing with a fire that burns at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Standard water suppression does not stop it. Most conventional fire extinguishers do not stop it. The National Fire Protection Association has dedicated guidelines specifically for EV battery fires. Many fire departments across this country are still working on acquiring the equipment and training to handle thermal runaway events effectively. For an independent shop with wooden bays, older buildings, and standard fire suppression systems, a thermal runaway event means losing the building, losing the equipment inside, and potentially losing lives. No reasonable shop owner is going to accept that risk for a single repair job. Now let's talk about the equipment required beyond safety gear. Even if a mechanic has completed the safety training and obtained the proper protective equipment, the diagnostic tools required to properly evaluate an electric truck's battery system are proprietary, expensive, and often unavailable to independent shops. Ford's FDRS diagnostic system, that stands for Ford Diagnostic and Repair System, requires dealer-level subscription credentials and specific hardware interface units. You cannot walk into an auto parts store and buy a universal scan tool that reads the battery management system data on a Lightning the way you can read codes on a gasoline F-150. Tesla's diagnostic software is not available to independent shops. Period. Full stop. No amount of money will buy you access to Tesla's diagnostic ecosystem if you are not a Tesla authorized service center. Rivian's service information is similarly controlled. To access the core battery management data on most electric trucks, you need OEM certified diagnostic equipment that costs between $15,000 and $60,000 depending on the brand. That is before you get into the specialized lifting equipment required to safely remove and handle a battery pack. The F-150 Lightning's battery pack weighs over 1,800 pounds. Handling that safely requires purpose-built battery lowering and repositioning equipment. Most independent shops do not have that equipment and cannot justify the cost of acquiring it for occasional EV service work. This brings us to the right to repair fight, which is the legislative and legal battle over whether truck manufacturers have to share repair data and parts access with independent shops. This is not a new fight. In 2020, Massachusetts passed the Motor Vehicle Owners' Right to Repair Act, which required automakers to provide telematics data access to independent mechanics by 2022. The automakers didn't just accept that. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation filed a federal lawsuit against the state seeking to block implementation. The legal battle delayed real-world enforcement for years. And electric vehicles add an entirely new layer of software complexity that makes existing right-to-repair frameworks harder to apply. Tesla built their entire service model around vertical control of repairs. Their parts are not sold through independent distributors. Their software locks are real and significant. There are documented cases of Tesla vehicles that were purchased at salvage auction, cars with physical damage but functional battery systems, that Tesla remotely bricked by disabling the vehicle's ability to charge or start, specifically to prevent non-Tesla shops from refurbishing and reselling those vehicles. That is not speculation. That is documented behavior reported by salvage dealers and investigated by automotive journalists at publications including Vice and The Drive. In 2023, the Federal Trade Commission issued a policy statement affirming the right to repair and calling out anti-competitive restrictions by manufacturers as a consumer harm. But a policy statement is not a law with enforcement teeth. The practical situation on the ground has not changed significantly for independent shops. Now let me put real numbers in front of you. The battery pack in an electric truck is not a component you replace one cell at a time. It is a sealed, integrated high-voltage assembly. When it fails beyond a certain degradation threshold, or when physical damage compromises the pack, the replacement is the entire unit. The F-150 Lightning battery pack replacement, based on documented cost estimates from Ford dealerships and insurance company assessments following accident damage, runs between $15,000 and $22,000 for parts alone. That is before labor charges. Before the specialized equipment needed to safely remove and reinstall a pack that weighs nearly a ton. Insurance adjusters working accident claims on electric trucks have been documenting these costs, and the industry has taken notice. Several insurers have already raised premiums on electric vehicles specifically because repair costs, particularly battery replacement costs, are dramatically higher than comparable internal combustion vehicles. A 2022 Rivian R1T battery replacement was quoted at over $20,000 by Rivian's own service network in documented cases reported by owners and covered by automotive journalists at Electrek and Car and Driver. A Chevrolet Silverado EV battery pack is similarly expensive. These are not fringe situations. They represent the actual cost structure of electric truck ownership when something goes seriously wrong. Contrast that with a conventional truck. A remanufactured 5-liter Coyote V8 for an F-150 runs around $3,500 to $5,000 for the engine itself. Any competent mechanic with basic engine pulling equipment can install it. Parts are sourced from dozens of competing suppliers. Labor is documented in every flat rate guide in the industry. The repair ecosystem for a gasoline-powered truck is decades deep and completely open. Any shop in any county can participate in it. The repair ecosystem for an electric truck is controlled, expensive, and geographically limited to wherever the manufacturer has chosen to build out service capacity. That geographic limitation is something people in cities don't think about. But truck buyers are not mostly city people. The majority of pickup truck buyers in this country live in rural or semi-rural areas. They buy trucks because they need trucks for real work, hauling equipment, towing trailers, carrying loads on unpaved roads in conditions that would ruin a car. These are people whose nearest big city might be an hour or two away on a good day. The nearest EV certified dealer for many of them is 80 to 150 miles distant. That gap matters enormously when your truck is your primary work vehicle and it's sitting disabled. Ford has roughly 3,100 dealerships across the United States. But when Ford launched their EV certification program, called Model E Certified, they required dealers who wanted to sell and service the Lightning to invest between $500,000 and $1.2 million in infrastructure. That meant installing DC fast chargers, acquiring specialized diagnostic and battery service equipment, and training technicians. Many rural dealers did the math and declined. They could not justify that level of capital expenditure for a vehicle that represented a small fraction of their anticipated sales volume. The result is that the Ford EV service network in rural America is significantly thinner than the general Ford dealer network. Owners in those areas are driving farther and waiting longer for EV service that their neighbors with gasoline trucks don't have to think about. The shortage of qualified EV technicians is well documented. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has noted increasing demand for automotive service technicians with EV-specific training. But training programs have not kept pace with the growth of the EV fleet. Community colleges and technical schools that train the majority of working mechanics in this country are still building out their EV curriculum. Instructors with real hands-on EV experience are in short supply. A 2023 workforce analysis from the National Automobile Dealers Association identified EV-trained technicians as a critical shortage and noted that the concentration of that workforce heavily favors urban and coastal markets. If you're in rural Tennessee and central Wyoming and the Texas Panhandle, the practical availability of EV service expertise near you is limited. This is not a temporary situation that resolves next year. Workforce development takes years. There is also the insurance question that shop owners deal with quietly, but that has very real consequences. Even when a shop owner genuinely wants to attempt EV work, their commercial insurance policy may explicitly not cover it. Standard garage keepers liability policies are written around conventional vehicle servicing environments. A high-voltage battery system introduces risk profiles that many insurers are not yet pricing properly or are actively excluding. Some shops have received direct guidance from their insurance brokers that attempting high-voltage battery work without certified personnel, certified equipment, and explicit policy endorsement leaves them uninsured for any incident that results. A single thermal event, a single electrical arc injury to a technician, without insurance coverage, ends a small shop that took a generation to build. That is not a risk any rational business owner accepts without certainty. Let me walk you through what happens at the end of the warranty period, because that is where the real long-term risk for owners sits. A new F-150 Lightning comes with a warranty that covers the high-voltage battery for 8 years or 100,000 miles. That sounds reassuring until you do the timeline math. The 2022 model year Lightnings will be out of warranty by 2030. At that point, every repair to the battery system is paid entirely by the owner. If the pack is degraded below Ford's acceptable threshold, and lithium-ion chemistry does degrade, especially under heavy use patterns like towing and fast charging and temperature extremes, your out-of-pocket cost for battery replacement is $15,000 to $22,000 minimum. And that cost is paid to whoever Ford's authorized service network says it should be paid to, because independent shops still can't do the work. There is a darker scenario that isn't hypothetical. What happens when a manufacturer discontinues support for a specific battery generation? In consumer electronics, this happens constantly. Manufacturers stop making replacement parts, software updates stop, the device becomes unsupported. When that happens with a smartphone that cost $1,000, you buy a new phone. When that happens with a truck that costs $65,000 to $95,000, you are in a fundamentally different situation. In early 2024, Fisker filed for bankruptcy. Owners of the Fisker Ocean electric vehicle found themselves with vehicles that were increasingly difficult to service as the company's service network collapsed and parts availability disappeared. Fisker is not a massive manufacturer, but the principle it illustrates applies to any EV maker. With a conventional truck, the aftermarket ecosystem is entirely independent of the original manufacturer's financial health. A Ford that goes bankrupt tomorrow still has millions of parts in distribution, hundreds of thousands of trained mechanics, and an aftermarket that will support it for decades. That independent support structure does not exist for electric trucks yet. Here is the straight comparison I want to leave you with. Take any gasoline F-150 from 1998 through 2023. A mechanic in Cookeville, Tennessee, in Lander, Wyoming, in Plainview, Texas, any of them can diagnose it with a scan tool that costs a few $100s. They can order any part from Napa, Rock Auto, AutoZone, O'Reilly, or a dozen specialty suppliers. They can access repair data from Chilton, Mitchell, or ALLDATA. The whole system is open. The knowledge is distributed. The parts supply is competitive and deep. A motivated owner with basic tools can do a significant percentage of the maintenance and repair work themselves. That truck can be kept running for 300,000 miles or more by the distributed ecosystem of American independent mechanics. Now take a 2022 F-150 Lightning with 85,000 miles and a degraded battery. To diagnose the battery management system accurately, you need Ford-credentialed diagnostic hardware that isn't available to independent shops without a dealer arrangement. To replace the pack, you need a Ford-certified technician, specialized handling equipment, and a battery that costs $15,000 to $22,000 from Ford's supply chain, because there is no competing aftermarket source for Lightning battery packs. The repair data is controlled by Ford software systems. The skills required are concentrated in a fraction of the total mechanic workforce, mostly in urban markets. If you are 100 miles from a certified Ford EV dealer and your truck isn't drivable, you are getting it towed 100 miles. That is the fundamental reality, and it is not accidental. When manufacturers control the repair ecosystem, the data, the parts, the tooling, the certification, they maintain a revenue stream from every service event on every vehicle they've ever sold. That is a business model, and it is a rational one from a corporate perspective, but it is directly contrary to the interests of truck owners who bought that vehicle expecting to use it for work, maintain it affordably over years, and get it fixed anywhere in America when something goes wrong. There are real efforts to change this. Independent EV-focused shops are opening in major cities. Right to repair legislation is advancing in Colorado, Minnesota, New York, and at the federal level. The EV technician training pipeline is growing. These things are real, and they matter, but they are years away from producing the kind of distributed, accessible, affordable repair ecosystem that gasoline trucks already have. If you buy an electric truck today, you are buying into an ecosystem that is not there yet. Here's what I want you to do before you sign anything. Find out which dealers within a reasonable distance of where you live are actually certified to service that specific brand's electric vehicles. Don't assume. Call and ask directly. Find out how many EV-certified technicians are on staff at that dealer and what their average wait time is for EV service appointments. Ask for a written estimate of what a full battery pack replacement would cost out of warranty. And then call your trusted local independent shop, the one that's kept your vehicles running for years, and ask them flat out whether they can touch a high-voltage EV battery system. Get that answer before you need it, not after. If you're a regular here, you know I give you straight information every week. No manufacturer talking points, no dealership spin. Just what's documented, what's real, and what matters if you actually use a truck the way trucks are supposed to be used. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with someone who's looking at an electric truck. The $22,000 battery trap is real. The service gap in rural America is real. The liability reasons your local shop can't help you are real. And nobody at the dealership is going to sit across the table and explain any of it before you write the check. The American pickup truck earned its reputation on durability, repairability, and the understanding that if something breaks, you can get it fixed. That standard applies whether your truck runs on diesel or electrons. The question every buyer needs to answer before they purchase is whether the EV they're considering actually meets that standard in the place they live and the way they work. Right now, for a lot of Americans, the honest answer is no.